Hi, Louise, it's Elder Calderoni from Devon County Council here. Can I just check that you can hear me okay? Because I don't normally use Zoom, so it's all a bit of a learning curve for me today.
Yes, I can see you and hear you.
That's great, fabulous. Thank you.
Jeffrey, are you chairing and are you starting us off?
I was hoping, all I can see at the moment, right, I can now see things. I could also see Kevin Care Home screen, so I was a bit mystified what was going on. So I was talking to Danny, but looks like we're all good to go. So I think we've got 6 people online. When I looked a minute ago, should we give it another minute before we start kick off and just make sure we've got our speakers? Elder, Elder.
That's
Can you unmute, Elder?
Yeah, sorry, chatting away. Hi there. I can't hear you very well, Jeffrey, though, so I'm not sure whether that's just me or that applies.
So, Louise, how's it working for you? Can you hear me okay?
No. I'm used to your poor quality.
Okay.
Where are your jazzy headset?
I can't hear you, Jeffrey, particularly. You're very faint. We need you louder.
Yeah. There's some, that one, and
That's it. I'm going to try it. Does that make any difference, by the way?
again. Okay.
Great sound quality, no.
Well, there's nothing much I can do about it in the short term.
No, that's better now.
I can hear you.
Okay, because I just turned the volume. Okay, so
That's better.
All right, so we've got a few more people coming online. So we've almost got 40 people. So I think we ought to crack on. So is Lucy in attendance? Are you there, Lucy? No, not yet.
Yes, she is here.
Sorry, yes, I'm here.
Is Guy on board? Is he ready to go?
He was a minute ago. He's disappeared.
Okay, so we're going to start off with Elder. So, all right, I'll start off, kick off my formalities by saying I hope you can hear me or I hope you can see me, and I apologise in advance about that. But we've got 4 different people speaking, and we got time at the end for a range of questions. And if we have the opportunity, there's a few points I'm going to share from today's Care Association Alliance meeting, which are a bit disturbing and concerning, but as that's hijacking the agenda, I won't launch into those sort of things. So for me, it's great to have Elder Calderone from DCC today. I think you're going to be talking to us about is it the care tracker and the IPC elements of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Wanting to put the slides on the screen, or are you happy to?
I'm happy just to talk, really. I was asked to keep it short, so I think I'm just going to do talking for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then I think it's really over to the providers on the call today. So thank you ever so much for having me along today. I just want to briefly talk about the capacity tracker tool. Oh, let me introduce myself first. I'm a project manager from Devon County Council, and I've been supporting with the Infection Control Fund and the use of the capacity tracker, amongst many other things as well. But that's my main reason for joining you all today. As you all know, the Department of Health and Social Care have been using the capacity tracker more and more as a key tool for the care home market to provide them with key information during COVID. That information is monitored nationally. It informs the national response to COVID. It's also monitored locally by us, the local authority, to ensure that we provide the right level of support to the care homes when it's needed. So today I just want to do a very, very quick reminder of the update requirements and the areas that you need to update the tool. And I'm sorry for any background noise. My partner and my child are now starting to have an argument. So if you can hear any noise in the background, I'm really sorry about that. So I'm going to do a quick reminder of the update requirements, and then it's really over to you to let me know how we can support you to complete the tool. I'm really keen on your feedback, on your experience of using the tool. I go to a Southwest capacity tracker meeting, and I want to make sure your voice is heard at that capacity tracker meeting so that we can ensure some key messages get back to the national team and the local Southwest team. That doesn't mean there's going to be great changes to the capacity tracker or the changes to the requirements for you to update it. I can't promise any of that, but I can promise I will get your messages across and back to the South West team so that they can then feed those comments and feedback nationally. So just I'm going to start off by focusing on the 3 key areas of the capacity tracker that need to be updated regularly. And I'm sorry if you already know this, and I'm, you know, what was it, teaching grandma to suck eggs. I don't mean to offend by telling you obvious things, but I just thought it would be a really good, helpful reminder. So there's 3 key areas. One key area is the vacancy data. So those your vacancy information is supposed to be updated daily or as and when there is a change. And I think in Devon, we used the capacity tracker before it was kind of used by the Department of Health and Social Care as part of the COVID response. So our providers should be more used to updating the vacancy side of the system anyway, because we were using that previously. So daily updates for the vacancy information. Business continuity data. So that was new data that was added in at the beginning of COVID back in March, April time, and it was built into all of the government guidance that came out to care homes, that there was a requirement for care homes to update your business continuity data on a daily basis as well. And that data relates to things like whether you've got enough PPE, whether you're open or closed to new admissions, whether you've got enough workforce to enable you to operate effectively. It's just trying to understand and measure the impact that COVID might be having you and on your provision of service. And that data is also looked at by us locally as well, so that we can respond to any concerns that you're raising on there. So our tactical response team are monitoring that data on a daily basis to see if providers are declaring any issues. More recently, they've added a new question in the business continuity data that relates to testing at discharge from hospital. So the first question is something like, have you had any admissions from hospital? And if you say yes, then the next question is something like, for those admissions, how many of them were tested before discharge from hospital? We've had a recent incident in the Plymouth and Toolbay area within the Devon footprint where a care home answered no to that question, saying no, that they weren't tested on discharge from hospital. That immediately led to NHS England have been monitoring the results, monitoring the data that's recorded. That led them to contact the CCG and the acute hospitals and gave them 4 hours to investigate that particular issue. In that particular instance, they were both mistakes, unintentional mistakes. The answer was recorded incorrectly. There's a Devon policy that we test before discharge from hospital into a care home. We've done that from very, very early on, and we absolutely want to know if there are any instances where that doesn't happen. So if that doesn't happen, you absolutely need to be recording that as a no on the capacity tracker. But I think I just wanted to illustrate that as an example of how, if the information is recorded incorrectly, what kind of sequence of events that could potentially ensue, but also, I guess, to alert you all to the fact that people are looking at this data. It's not a tick box exercise. It's not something that you've been asked to do for no reason at all. The information is being looked at. So whoever in your organisation updates the capacity tracker, it would be really, really helpful if you could pass that message on, that accurate and timely reporting is helpful. The third area that needs to be updated is the adult social care infection control questions. These are, we had these questions in before in relation to Infection Control Fund Round 1. These questions have been refreshed and updated with the launch of the new Infection Control Fund. There's a whole swathe of questions in there. Most of them have to be updated weekly, and there's a couple of questions that need to be updated monthly. And the answers to those questions and the capacity tracker generally are directly linked to your access to the second payment of the Infection Control Fund. So as stipulated in the guidance, if the capacity tracker isn't updated, so weekly for those infection control questions, then we as a local authority are not supposed to release a second instalment. We don't want to do that. we want to get the money out to care home providers. We want to get it out to you as quickly as possible. So it's really just a plea, again, for anyone, for all those people in your organisation that are updating the tracker, to make sure that they are answering those questions on a weekly basis. And then for the few at the bottom, it's only on a monthly basis for those. That's it from me. The only other thing that I was going to mention is that if any of your staff are struggling to use the capacity tracker or don't quite know how to use it, then we're more than happy to arrange some training for them. And if you just email the COVID mailbox, and then we will make sure that happens, and we'll make that available to any of your staff that need that. Enough of me talking. I'm really keen to hear your feedback or any responses from you, or any questions that you've got. I may not be able to answer them all now, but I'll certainly go away and find the answers for you. I'm not very familiar with Zoom. I don't know whether you can put your hand up or anything, but I can see a chat bar. So this is the first time I've used Zoom, so I'm not quite sure how we do this bit, Jeffrey.
Yes, people can raise their hand, or they can just carry on and ask questions. And I guess there will be one or two coming, but I'll kick off with a couple anyway. You may be aware there's a lot of concern about the increased amount of time that's going into the capacity tracker, and it just seems to be growing like topsy. Are we to presuppose that it's a kind of settled now? It's not going to grow any bigger because it's getting a bit out of hand?
No idea, Jeffrey. I've got absolutely no idea. So the changes that you're all notified about, we get notified about them in exactly the same time as you. We have no pre-warning. We have no heads up this is going to happen, even though we have regular meetings within the Southwest with the capacity tracker team. It almost feels as though they don't really know themselves. So yeah, I've got no idea. I'm hoping it's going to be settled for a bit now.
Could you tell me, from the information that comes on the capacity tracker, what do we know about the current generalised occupancy rates in Devon?
Well, you've put me on the spot there, because I don't actually look at that data, daily myself. So I can't answer that question, but I'm happy to get back to you in the forum to give you an idea of how those vacancies. So I don't monitor that. As a project manager, I'm very distanced from the detailed work that all of the various teams do undertake.
Okay.
I think Karen put her hand up as well, was it? You're on mute.
There you go.
For the capacity tracker, for being done daily, does that include weekends as well?
Yes, there is an expectation. Yes, that is done. I think one of the things about the capacity tracker and those weekend updates, you don't have to be on a fixed work computer to do the update. It can be done on a mobile phone, an iPad. It's very, very easy to log into the system and update daily. We certainly won't be withholding any infection control fund monies if you're not updating 7 days a week. We're keen to get those monies out, and I think that we've been operating on the basis of 5-day work, Monday to Friday updates to vacancies and business continuity. If you are able to update at the weekend as well, that would be absolutely brilliant. With regard to the infection control questions, they do need to be done weekly, with a few of them monthly. Does that help?
Thank you.
Just to quickly say, we've got 47 people online now, which is absolutely fantastic. So for those who've joined us a little bit late, welcome, and thank you for joining us. Any more questions for Elder?
Hi, Elder, it's Lorna.
Hi, Lorna.
I posted in the chat bar just a query about, you mentioned the capacity tracker asking about testing on discharge from hospital. I don't complete the capacity tracker, but the way you said it, it wasn't about the day of discharge, which is the expectation. Is it picking up about test on day of discharge? If it isn't, would that be a better question? Because actually we're having instances where people are discharged from hospital, but they have been tested the previous day, which is obviously then presenting a risk to the home.
That's a really good challenge. So I'm just going to see if the other problem I have is that I can't actually see the questions on the capacity tracker because I'm not a provider, so I'm having to base it on. So I think that is a really, really good question. I think that is something that I will feed back to the Southwest team to actually say that actually the nuance of the question should be, which would be a more accurate a less risky question and position is, are people tested on the day of discharge and the day they're admitted into your care homes? I will feed that back. At the moment, I don't know how the question is actually phrased on the system, but I will have a look at that and I will definitely feed back that message.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lorna.
Elder,
another question.
Again.
Oh, hello.
There's a question in the chat bar about somebody's inability to arrange training with the CCG. I think there's been a few homes that have had difficulty, and I think they scaled back their offering. I don't know whether you could sort of see if the CCG are going to offer any more.
Okay, so PPO training, tried to organise one a few occasions but wasn't able to. I will pick that up. I will feed that back. If particular providers are happy to share their contact details with me, then I will put my email address in the chat bar now and just contact me. But that aside, I will pick it up with the CCG anyway.
Can I just say, Elder, I've just had an email from our CQC inspector giving me the link through to the CCG infection control training and the PPE donning and doffing, which is beginning again, according to them, on the 19th, which is tomorrow. And it's being facilitated through the CHC team again, as it was at the beginning.
Okay.
Pandemic, just so as an answer to that, I just received it today.
And I think I've had an email as well saying that the CCG are starting again an hours training in January.
What would be good then, because obviously that message isn't getting out to all of you, is it? So what I will try and do, we are doing a weekly newsletter to all of the providers now via the pen. So I will try and see if we can get an update on that training added to the newsletter so that you're all aware of the position. I've put my email address in the chat bar if anyone wants to contact me specifically about the training. Was there anything else? Any other questions that I can help with? Are you all confident that, because I'm aware that I often talk to providers and owners in relation to the capacity tracker, and we don't often speak to the actual people, the registered users that are using the capacity tracker. And also what's become more apparent to me is that the communications about the capacity tracker won't come to all of you unless you're a registered user of the system. So there'll be a whole range of capacity tracker communications that are sent through to your registered users of the system. So I think there's another question to sort of make sure that they are passing on those key communications to you so that you're aware. I'm sure they are, but so that you're aware of all of the different changes and the requirements that are happening with the system.
Elder, can I thank you for coming on the webinar today and explaining all that? It's really helpful. Can I just finish with a couple of quick observations, and I don't know if they're relevant or not still, but in the early days, a lot of the healthcare professionals who were accessing the care tracker were making various comments about homes that were actually far from accurate. And I did write in and say that this was a practice that I wasn't very happy about. That could be raised in perhaps one of your meetings. The second thing I wanted to some sort of phone ringing, if they can answer.
Yes, mine. Sorry, I'm trying to mute.
So the second thing was that in relation, Devon, I think, has got a very good track record of not discharging without negative tests. But I just want to flag up that around the country there have been increasing concerns as hospitals have been getting busier. That a number of tests, there have been instances of false tests results being given out when in fact a conversation has taken place to say the test result is negative, but it has transpired to be positive, and that's maybe to do with error or mistake rather than deliberate. The other thing that has caused to be a problem is that the test results sometimes referred to being tests on admission, not tests as a precondition of discharge. So there is some increasing disquiets and increasing pressure around the country. And I just hope that's not going to be the case in Devon. So I'll just end on that comment.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. I'll make sure that all those comments are passed on to the relevant people in the organisation that need to hear them. And I'll also follow up on the actions that I've said that I would follow up on today. Thank you very much for having me. I'm sorry that I've talked for so long. I've overrun my time. Do you want me to stay on now, or would you like me, am I okay to sort of leave the meeting, Jeffrey?
You're fine to leave the meeting, so thank you very much indeed. You can stand if you want to, but you're fine to leave. But thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Hopefully we got Guy there. Have we got Guy? Guy, you on board somewhere? No. That's... So,
I am here. Hello.
Oh, hello. Thank goodness for that. So can I'm going to struggle to pronounce your surname. So Mazaski, was that being fair?
That's close enough, Jeffrey. Don't worry about it.
Very topical at the moment, particularly as all the trials are going through Portland Down as to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. A lot of us have got your tests, so which we're using. I gather the Innova test has been the test that's being preferred for use with the care home testing pilots using lateral flow tests in Devon and Cornwall and Hampshire. But anyway, perhaps you can bring us up to speed on the lateral flow test, the availability, the supplies, how good they are and that kind of stuff, and where we should be looking next.
Okay, so I think probably I've got three main topics to cover. First, the current operational situation with us, what we've been up to in the last since we last spoke to you, and like I say, schedule of deliveries, security of supply and whatnot, and then cover a little bit about what I know about the government's testing. Again, probably looking for a bit of feedback from you, because I'll, as usual, have half a story. And then again, there has been a number of questions offline about the vaccine and what impact that's likely to have as well. So briefly touch on that at the end. So just to keep you up with what we are currently, the situation is with Vaxport currently. So most of you have received your test. There are outstanding orders. I've talked to most of them personally today. The situation is that there was a couple of days hiccup with the dispatch from Barcelona. However, the shipment landed today in Stansted, and it will be in the warehouse by tomorrow to start shipping. So you should receive anybody outstanding stuff by the end of the week. So that's coming there. I'm receiving another shipment next week of around 100, so that's 200 kits. So that means that we will have ample supply on the shelves running right up to Christmas. So going forward, it will be a matter of days before you receive them. So we've really put some serious stock on the shelves. In addition, we have taken in samples from 6 different other manufacturers, and we've assessed them in our own laboratory. We have dropped 2 based on performance. We have dropped 2 based on price. They performed very well, but they were absolutely extortionate. So we've been them, and we are now sitting with 2 suppliers. The one you're already familiar with, Vitase, and I've got Roche coming on as well. I expect first shipments from them in about 2 weeks' time. So we'll have dual suppliers and stock on the shelves going forward. So everything should smoothen out a little bit there. With regards to our kind of approach to this, obviously we have our warehouse with the stock in it in Luton. However, we've taken a small amount out and brought them on premises to Vaxport Towers, and basically we're using that as a break glass in case of emergency. So if you guys 10 o'clock at night, mad panic, pick up the phone and we can get something in a courier down to you or in the post office the very next morning for rapid response. So for very fast stuff, we even cut out our warehouse. So that's available now. I'm going to leave the all hours number in the chat box and the all hours email in the chat box for you guys to give me a shout if you ever require it. One other thing that's been quite prominent is the sampling method. So we are aware that the nasopharyngeal is the least preferable of the various sampling methods. We've looked at a supplier that has a saliva, deep throat saliva test. It didn't perform well in the laboratory, so we haven't gone forward with it. However, we are very aware that this sampling method, sampling site issue is particularly an issue in likes of dementia care and whatnot, where you've got kind of difficulties sampling people. So we are actively trying to find people a solution for that, because we're aware that it is very much an ask. So that's us in terms of the current situation. The government trials, obviously quite a lot has developed over the last week. You've doubtless heard the mass scale stuff going up in Liverpool, the intention to test the university kids before they return home, and obviously more close to home, they are rolling out some trials in your very area. I believe there's 3 or 4 of you that are actually on the trial to look at the use of LFDs within care homes, particularly around the aiding visitation roll up to Christmas. I'm delighted by that. I think it should have been done long ago. Finally, they're moving on it. So I think the short, long story short is that it's rather an endorsement of what you guys and we've been part of here. I just wish it had happened sooner, and we've kind of demonstrably been ahead of the curve here. So I think kudos for having the foresight and courage on that one. With regards to government supply, very, very large buys have been made across a number of manufacturers by the government. That's largely limited to 3 main manufacturers. We'll touch on that in a minute. The demand is absolutely vast. The NHS itself is absorbing a lot of that buy, because they're implementing point of care testing for their staff, because obviously the PCRs, the known issues with time to result. The universities are mopping up a huge bit, but there is a pretty hefty allocation for care homes. So that's encouraging. We don't know when that will start hitting you. We reckon it will be quite close to Christmas, given the delays and stuff like that. So that's the best intelligence I have. Like I say, any feedback that you're getting from the participants in the trial, I'll be delighted to hear it and discuss the things. One other issue that has come up with regard to the government's approach to this, we are seeking clarity. Well, I'm sure you'll know, COVID is legally a notifiable disease. So any positive tests need to be, so that previously did not include lateral flow devices. There has been some movement, but it's not clear exactly what PHE want. To that end, we are currently working on a way of getting you basically, if it does turn out that there's a reporting obligation, that's a piece of admin that you want rid of. We are actively looking at how we can get our software into your hands, FOC, to take care of any reporting obligation that may develop as the government issues it. So that's something we know is in process, and we're looking for a way to get rid of it for you as well, should it be a problem. Okay, that's broadly the government trials thing. The other thing I've been asked to address is some of the known information on the vaccines that have been announced in the first 2 weeks. So you'd have to be living in a bunker to not have heard. There have been 2 announcements. The first one a couple of weeks ago from a partnership with Pfizer and BioNTech. They've produced a vaccine based on mRNA technology that appears to be extremely effective, higher than 90% efficacy. That's very encouraging. I have to say, we now know that it's possible. So big light at the end of the tunnel. Number of unanswered questions. Probably the most prominent in people's minds are, how long will this immunity from the vaccine last? The answer to that is unknown. We think it will be about a year from extrapolated data, but the only thing that will really prove that is taking the time to find out. So that is an unknown. We have reason to believe it will be a positive outcome. The other thing to note is that both the BioNTech and the Moderna results, the responses in over 65 have been quite, we didn't expect them to be quite as robust as from somebody in their mid-20s, but they are good and strong. They have exceeded expectations. So that's another particularly buoying piece of information for your particular sector as well. Obviously, I think it's been widely kind of proposed that the healthcare workers and care home workers, and indeed the residents, will be very much high on the list in terms of priority vaccinations. So that's about that. To comment briefly on the logistics, you'll have heard there are some rather tricky requirements, particularly with the Pfizer vaccine around cold chain and cold storage. I'm not entirely sure how that will be overcome. One very encouraging thing about the Moderna vaccine is that it does not have such quite stringent requirements. To comment on some of the stuff that's closer to home, the Oxford AstraZeneca trial, which I've been involved in myself, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they're a different technology, not mRNA based, they're adenoviral based. One relevant piece of information in that regard is the choice of adenoviruses is a deliberate design choice by the vaccine makers. The adenovirus is notorious for leaving a very strong and durable immune response. But obviously the way they've done it is they've targeted it at COVID, as it were. So there is a likelihood, and this must be borne out by the data, I must add, that we will be in a position where the immunity that's derived from the vaccine, particularly the adenoviral ones, will be significantly more robust and longer lasting than any immunity that's derived from the actual disease. That's a very positive thing, again, for the protection of the population in general. So that's a quick summary on the vaccines and stuff like that. I've probably talked too long already. Please hit me with any questions, again, about the tests themselves and how you found them, anything we can do to improve, questions about the government's trials, and again, anything I can help to answer with regarding vaccination and what you're likely to experience in the months ahead.
That's great, Guy. Can I kick off with a couple of questions? I mean, I think it's safe to say that all around the world, the pressure on trying to get hold of LFD tests is going to be fairly intense. So that's why you're looking at other suppliers. I believe that the suppliers of the test you first produce are not actually necessarily sharing all their data with Porton Down, but I believe there is a trial going through with Porton Down with the particular test. Is that correct? So
that's correct. So we shipped 500 kits to Porton. So we made it through phase one, which is essentially a desk review of the specifications, because it's a pre-screen to cut out any rubbish. Then they take them to the laboratory in kind of phase two and A and B, and then further than that, they actually roll them out into one of their testing hubs, the field testing hubs, and they report back that data throughout the phases. We've just got the VITAC tests down to Porton Down, so they're made past desk review and they're into stage 2B. Again, we don't have timelines. Everybody and his dog's trying to get their tests through this process at the moment, and Porton Down's obviously limited in their capacity, so we'll keep you updated there. One thing that I would add is that the Roche test that we've bought in from a second supplier, they are further along that process. So they are into the final phase. So we actually might have an approval on one of our suppliers faster than we think. I'm still not willing to commit to a date, though. I'm sorry. There's just too many uncertainties.
Okay, so what comfort do you think we can draw from the existing certification, existing tests that are carried out in Spain and the EU certifications and that kind of stuff? I mean, are we effectively reinventing the wheel, or should we be cautious, or how should we read it? This is reinventing the wheel. These technologies are well established. Lateral flow has been a thing for many, many years. The thing that basically gave me confidence to actually first bring in VITAC stuff and run them up in our lab was they have a strong reputation for a start. They've been around for a long time. They were able to share their clinical data with me that they generated those performance figures. They did it freely and openly. And like I say, they gave me a full and open report, and I was able to see, exactly what they'd run. So they were very, very open. And like I say, their reputation was robust. So that allowed us to take a chance. We then brought them into the UK, and we actually did a shakedown in our laboratory. It wasn't on live clinical samples. The procedure we go through is we take recombinant viral protein, and we do what is called a limit of detection check. So we start at a reasonably high concentration, and we do 10-fold serial dilutions down to low picograms of viral protein. And the tests must be able to detect down past a certain level for us to even consider them. So we've personally benchmarked VITAC's data. They've provided us with their data as well. And like I say, their kind of reputation is extremely robust in the market as well. The final proof of the pudding is going to be a third-party evaluation by somebody at PHE, but I'm afraid I just don't have a time machine. No, you don't have a time machine, but in your gut instinct, comparing what the information that Oxford University released about the Innova tests and the VITAC tests, how would you, in your sort of gut instinct, interpret the comparable effectiveness of the two different types of tests? Do you think they're going to be very much in the same ballpark, or are you expecting much difference?
You not expecting a great deal of difference, to be perfectly honest. At the top end, which again nothing that I'm even looking at is outside the kind of the top tranche of tests. You're fighting over 1 or 2% in sensitivity and maybe a 0.5% to 1% in specificity. So the margins between these tests, it's much of a muchness, to be perfectly honest. You're looking at anywhere, basically all the reasonable tests are coming in between 92 and 95% sensitive. They're all in a 3% bracket.
Can I just ask?
Innova looks to be at the top of that, and we are kind of sitting right in the middle. So I would suggest that without having the data to hand, that we are very much comparable to the Innova test.
Okay, my last question, other people can ask questions as well, but I know it's on people's mind. So we got, you touched on the COVID vaccines, and we've got Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Moderna are the three kind of contenders, I believe. Is that right? And
right.
The Pfizer one is a 2-part test, and we've got the two doses have to be given so many days apart. There are some side effects of like having a hangover, and there's the problems over the temperature at which they have to be stored, which is minus 70 degrees C. So are we suggesting that it looks like the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Moderna ones are going to be a better bet if they're available in the short space of time?
Yeah, so the Moderna and the AstraZeneca are going to be much easier to roll out than the Pfizer because of that temperature requirement. However, they both still require a 2-dose booster regimen. So
okay.
It's still calling people back after a fortnight, which is obviously an issue with compliance and whatnot. The one that I've really got my eye on is Johnson & Johnson's version. So that's an adenovirus vaccine. So it has all the nice attributes of the Oxford one, including the enduring immunity and whatnot. It's got the kind of normal temperature distribution. So there's no minus 80 and minus thing. And crucially, it's a single dose. That's going to be the one that really comes out the woodwork and causes a big difference. That's a little bit behind Oxford. I would imagine we'll get phase 3 data very late this year for that. But that's what my money is on in terms of having the biggest impact. No, very little cold chain, long-lasting immunity, and it's a single dose regimen. So the honest truth is the one I'm most excited about is Johnson & Johnson's offering.
Thank you. Thank you. That's for me.
I think we've got a question in the chat bar as well, and then I think I'm conscious of time.
Yeah. So, Margot, you're asking about...
Yeah, I'm just going back to the lateral flow tests. Having done this myself, it's a 10-minute test, as you know. I'm just a little bit concerned about on the diagram of when you have to actually do the test. It shows the sample literally going right down the nose, down the throat on the actual diagram of where to take the sample from, and that could be really confusing for some people. It's also pretty hard to do on yourself. Yes. I think it's a little bit misleading, or is that the expectation? Because if that's the expectation, then doing that type of sampling on elderly people is going to be very challenging.
I would agree. No, that's not obviously that it needs to go right back to your pharyngeal plate to pick up.
Yeah, but
the reason doing that is the viral load is highest in that area. So
sure.
Maximum sensitivity. There is, and again, I can look at sourcing them for you, but there are alternatives that use either oropharyngeal or what they call deep sputum sampling.
Yeah.
From what we have seen, there's a bit of a payoff in performance for that convenience. So it's something I'm actively looking into for you.
It's just that the diagram shows it going literally down your throat. And when I saw it, I thought, oh my Lord, how are we going to do that? So I just thought I'd mention it because it is a bit off-putting if you come to do the test when you see that.
I would agree. One thing I would urge you to do is if your guys are nervous or unclear or anything, please shout for training. And that goes to everybody. Please put up your hand. I'll happily take people for an hour, go through their various concerns, explain why they're doing the things they're doing, what impact not doing them has, and generally help them out that way as well. Like I say, that's something that like I say, we're more than happy.
Yeah, I don't know whether this had an effect on our own test, because Jeff did one of those tests and it was negative, and then he had another sample where you go to testing site and that was positive. So you know, I just thought I'd flag that as being something of concern. That's all.
No problem. We are actively working on that. The problem is the biology of the virus. That's the spot where you have the highest viral load, so that's the place to look if you're going to find it.
Sure.
Other stuff will advance and come out and stuff like that. But what we've seen so far is the deep sputum and the throat are again a few percent less sensitive. And again, you know, we're trying to do everything we can to maintain that high performance, because, you know what I mean, it's such is the risk. So I'll keep you up to date with what.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Guy. That's fantastic. That's been really helpful, really informative, bang up to date. Thank you very much.
I'm just one thing. I'll put my the emergency contact details in the chat now, so everybody, if you want to grab them, like I say, we are that's who to shout to when things go belly up at 10:30 at night. Okay.
Thank you.
That's kind. Thank you.
So, Joe, are you ready to go? Joe's gone. Oh, no.
Joe's disappeared. You might need to swap, because the other thing we were going to talk about was what to do, how to deal with an outbreak, what to do if you suddenly end up in that situation of an outbreak. So if Joe's not, oh, Joe's back. Joe, you're back, but you're on mute.
Yes, sorry, I had to take an urgent call. Sorry. Yeah, so we wanted to, well, I wanted to share with you my experience with CQC. We felt that it would be a good topic, seeing as they are doing the rounds. They seem to be, well, I think they're inspecting about 300 homes, and they're only looking at the infection control side of things. So we had our inspection last Tuesday. They let us know on Monday, so they called us on Monday and said, we're coming to see you tomorrow. I'm sure there's some of you that have already had this inspection. And they sent us an email with their inspection toolkit, which I have actually found on their website. So I can put a link to that later on, because it actually gives you the questions that they're going to look at and examples of good practice as well. But we only got that sort of 24 hours before, so we worked through that and made sure we could answer at least most of the questions. But I just wanted to share some of the sort of main things that stood out to me whilst they were here, because there are a lot of questions that they're looking at, but their main focus seemed to be, and I'm sure different inspectors have got different areas that they'll be focusing on, but for us it was a lot around risk assessments. They wanted to see a risk assessment for each individual resident around visiting, and if they had, we have one resident, for example, who suffers very much with anxiety, and it is very important for them to see their daughter and her husband. Now, obviously, we're trying to restrict visitors, but for that instance, we are allowing her to have two members of the same household, and they wanted to see that we'd done a risk assessment around that. They also, what else did they want to see? They wanted to see what we had in place for visitors. So what was the procedure from the time that they arrived to the time that they left? And they wanted to see evidence of that. We have a visiting pod, so they were quite happy with the pod. But I think it's about evidencing absolutely everything and what has led you to that decision. I know a lot of you already do that, but it was just, she was really focusing on that. The other thing was cleaning schedules. They wanted to see evidence of how many times different areas are cleaned in the home and that they've been signed off. I mean, there was even a suggestion that every time a toilet, a communal toilet is used, that it needs to be cleaned, wiped down. Cool points need to be wiped down every time they are pressed. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work involved in that. But it's just to give you an idea of where they're coming from. What else did she say? Let's have a look. They wanted to see what cleaning products we're using. They wanted to see the storage and how did we know what cleaning products to use and what training we'd done with the staff. Infection control training, had we done just online training or had we done any additional training and where had we heard from it? The other thing was around where do we get our information from? She was very keen on finding out our sources of information. Did we know about the government website and that sort of thing? What else? She asked us about what would we do if we had a COVID positive resident. So did we have a plan in place and a procedure basically? She also said what would happen if one of our residents went to hospital, for example, a UTI, and in hospital they got COVID, but they were clinically well to come home. What was our procedure for that? And they wanted to see evidence of that procedure and how we would manage that. Talking about procedures, they wanted to see a procedure in place for any members of staff refusing to test, and what would we do about it? She was quite interested in that. And audits as well. She wanted to see all the audits we'd done around PPE, weekends, nights. So how can we evidence that the staff are wearing their PPE when they're meant to be wearing it, and they're doffing and donning and doffing. So yeah, so she was here for about 3 hours. She did have a quick walk around the home. I wasn't keen on her going too far, and we said no to looking in rooms and things. So she just had a look at the cleaning cupboard, the laundry area, and a couple of the communal areas. So yeah, and the report's taken about a week to come through. There's no rating on it, but it does go on your CQC page. So for us, I think it was a good exercise. You know, we've all been doing our best over the last 8 months and sort of reading every piece of guidance that's been thrown our way, and in a way it was good and reassuring to know that we are sort of on track. And I do feel like the inspector we had was trying to help us out as well. There were a couple of things that we'd missed, and she just gave us suggestions, but in general she was happy. So I definitely felt like it was a good exercise.
Thank you, Jo. I don't know if there are any questions from anybody. I know we've got another speaker, Lucy, if you're ready in a minute. Any questions from anybody? No, I think we're all frightened to death of what you just said, by the way. Oh,
that wasn't my intention.
I'm going to look at your report now and see what they say about you, thinking, oh my God, I better get this all out. Thank you for sharing that, Jo. I think you made it sound a lot easier than I think it probably was, to be fair. And thank you for going through that process and sharing that with us. Okay. Is that all right, Jo? Okay.
Yeah, fine. Yep.
Thank you very much. Lucy, are you happy to share your experience? And do you want, well, Lucy Ball, thank you very much, from Castle Grove in North Devon. I don't know exactly where you are, but somewhere.
Devon. Yeah, we're just above Tiverton.
All right, just perfect. Well, that's north to me.
Yeah, no, it's fine. All good. So this is as a result of me having a small rant on the WhatsApp group about bulk uploads, which I know people have had mixed sort of results with. We're also one of the pilot homes for the tests. We're doing the PCR tests, and I've ended up doing quite a lot of media about that over the last couple of days. So that's been a fun few hours. So just, I haven't done any slides because I suspect people might want to come in with their own experiences, but I just thought I've spoken to a few of you, and thank you for those of you who have sort of given me a phone call and told me how you're doing things. Some of you will have seen, you will have had an email this afternoon that they're changing, the government are changing the registration address, email address for website address for when you now register your tests. So it's worth updating any of your paperwork or posters that you might have around the home on that, because the address is changing. It comes into effect in December, but it's live now. Quite why they'd like to change it yet again, I don't know, but you know, we're getting used to this sort of thing, aren't we? So you might want to save that one to your favourites. The bulk upload spreadsheet, I've had inconsistent success with this, and when it doesn't work, it's very frustrating. But I do know that quite a lot of you are having success with this, so I would urge people to give it a go. The bulk upload spreadsheet has been updated. It means that you can save down the spreadsheet, you can populate your information that you need on that, so you can have one for residents and you can have one for staff. And the only thing that is worth doing is obviously when you don't test a certain person, so for example, a member of staff who's not there, you obviously need to clear down those cells before you upload it. The thing that seems to help with this bulk upload spreadsheet is a scanner, like you get in the supermarkets. You can buy them from Amazon. There are all sorts around. I don't think there's any one that's better than others, but it means that you can zap through. The only irritating thing about using the bar scanner is you obviously have to do it twice, and the moment you've done it once, it tells you off for not having done it twice. Well, there's only so quickly you can make your fingers work. One tip on the WhatsApp group is to minimise your sheets down to about 10% and then just literally zap through them. But that seems to work quite well, and I think the government are kind of working out any glitches within the bulk upload. Now, what has happened? Dottie. The dog is whining at the door. For those of us who haven't had great success in bulk uploading, the only other thing you can do is do this is register manually, but one by one. And again, you will know that as the weeks go on, the government requirements sort of change a little bit, so they want to know more and more about the people that you're registering. So if you have one admin person putting in that information, you now need to have actually quite a lot of information about the staff. For example, their first line of address and postcode. Well, I've got 50 members of staff, so that's quite a bit of fun. One of the things we have done, and I know lots of homes are doing this, is we've set up a little self-registering station. It's actually now in our staff room, and we're encouraging our staff to do their own tests and self-register themselves as well. That's working really well. Our staff have been doing their own tests for quite some time now anyway. It was the registration that was a bit tricky for some of them who are not massively digitally literate, but I found that the peer support around the staff room has been brilliant about that. I do have a document that I've written, if people want me to share it, talking people through how to register your own tests, and I'm happy to share that. You just would need to tweak that to make it look more like your own stuff. We've provided a mini iPad for that, but anything would do, a laptop, anything like that. So that's worked out really well, and all the people have needed just a little bit of time and a little bit of support to do that. So we've been quite pleased with that. Oh, you're a star. Thank you so much, Libby. One thing that's come to light that I didn't know about, and it seems to be included in the test boxes a little bit more, is that we are able to use the Royal Mail Priority Post Box scheme. Now, apologies if you already know about this, but this is a really useful way of getting your staff and anybody else actually to test if they're not on site. So we've been sort of cajoling and persuading some of our staff who don't work on the days when we test to come on site, grab a test, quickly do it and register and what have you. Well, actually, we found that within the, there is actually a way of doing this without without actually coming on site, and it's using the Royal Mail priority post box. I'll share the link onto the WhatsApp group, but I've noticed in the last week that actually these are coming up within the test, and they're actually pre-printed labels. And then all you need to do is find your Royal Mail priority post box. There's some around. We're in very rural Devon, and I've got one down the road. So they really have looked into it. Within those priority mailboxes, there's a bag. And so when you put it in, it just means it goes to a different member of staff within the Royal Mail. And we're moving to getting some of our staff to do that over coming on site, because we don't really want them having to drive for miles to come to us just to do a test. So that's about it, really. Just heads up that the registration website address has changed. An encouragement and feedback on bulk upload. I haven't had anything to do with the spreadsheet before you have any bad feedback about it, but everyone I've spoken to recently has said it's a lot better. And just, you know, encourage your staff to empower them to self-register, because it really does work, and it takes the admin off a lot more. What we have asked all our staff to do is, rather than if they put in their own email address, we ask them to forward the notification email once they get that to our main email address, so that the onus is on them to let us know that they have proved positive.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Lucy. I don't know if there's any questions. I know we're running a bit tight for time. The other subject which we wanted to cover is to have an open forum discussing any burning questions about what to do in the event of an outbreak. I don't know if Shrian's on the line or not, because he's normally got quite a lot to say about this kind of thing. I'm not the expert, so I won't be trying to field answers that questions have. But does anybody want to kick off with a question, or does anybody want to make a contribution on that particular subject? Thank you, Lucy, by the way. No? Laura?
Put Eve on the spot. Sorry, Eve.
Yeah. She'll divert to Shrian, don't worry, it's okay.
No, I just thought maybe your top 10 sort of tips, sort of, you know that you've got a positive resident in the home. What were the top 10 things that your staff did, or the first things they did, other than panic and breathe?
So the outbreak that we've been dealing with here, where Karen and myself are still here at the minute, we've been backwards and forwards, is that as soon as we had one positive staff member, and that staff member was symptomatic, we stood up a Red House straight away. So we immediately activated the Red House plan before anybody living here showed any symptoms, before any other staff became symptomatic. So we did that, and within 24 hours of doing that, that Red House was full. But what it meant was that literally, I know Shrian's probably said we screened slightly lower for temperatures at 37.5, and we had the first member of staff test positive, we then had 2 others test positive, and then a 4th, and by that point we had 3 people living here with temperatures of around 37.6, 37.7, which we moved immediately into the Red House. The time it took to stand the Red House up was incredible, in terms of moving people's rooms, moving people's belongings, deep cleaning, getting equipment in, etc. You know, it was hours and hours worth of work, and that was with 2 of us. Had we had to do that in the situation where you've got somebody that you were clinically suspecting as positive, or be confirmed as positive, that was, especially if it, you know, somebody that was mobile, not able to understand the risks, etc., would have been an absolute nightmare. So I think that's the biggest, that was the biggest thing. And as that Red House became full, we stood the next one up. And I think you could end up, I think we've changed zones 7 times here in 3 weeks. But I think it's, for me, it would be definitely about having that next plan, having that red team of staff ready to go at whatever hour, splitting your rota down very quickly into green, amber and red, making sure that you zone people that have been exposed to either positive staff or positive residents in the same area, and not have anybody out on a limb anywhere else. And, you know, we have had plans drawn up to activate this sort of since April time, but being aware once you've activated your initial plan, you've got to have that second plan in your head all the time, then your 3rd plan and your 4th plan, because as we know, things can change, you know, rapidly.
Can I ask a question? What size room is it?
It's what, sorry?
What size of setting?
The home here is 37 beds.
Okay, then that's, so you were juggling 7 different zones in 37 beds.
We've changed zoning 7 times across
right.
but it's been a significant outbreak with 28% of people living here have tested positive. So it hasn't been a small outbreak, 22% of our staff. We've started to change the way we sort of get infection control messages across off the back of this, because without question, the biggest area of transmission with staff was around their self-care. Their infection control practices between people living here was actually very good. But when it's time to go for a break, time to nip outside, time to go home, their self-care went out the window, and you started finding aprons with tails hanging out of bins, etc. So we've done a lot of work with them on that. And also when people are tired and they're working additional hours, their self-care definitely drops. And that's absolutely when transference has happened. So we've used our floor plans. So we took the floor plans for all of our homes and zoned them in the sense of where would our initial red house be? Who would we have to move rooms? Where would they go? Pre-writing risk assessments, pre-writing sort of care plans for that. So you've not got all that to do at the same time, but actually using the floor plans to zone and actually using the breaks and where your fire points are. That's how we've zoned down.
Yeah, and I think for some of us with older properties, it's been a challenge of thinking about how you'd manage to separate out a certain area of an old property, and there's not really space around that fire.
It's really hard, isn't it? We've got a couple of purpose-built properties, care homes that have been very easy to zone, haven't been easy to zone, because you do need to try and find a separate entrance or exit. But I think it's about being prepared to uproot the care home in so many different ways. Like one of the plans for one of the managers, their office will go. Actually, that's going to be a key Dunning and Doffin area, sort of split into 2, as part of their red plan. So I think we've had to really sort of think outside the box and change things also as we've gone along, but just with that absolute intent that it's got to stick in firm red, amber and green for people living and working. And that includes domestic staff, nursing staff, everything. It's quite military, to put it mildly, I would say. It really does have to run as separate units throughout the whole place.
Eve, how do you manage moving people's rooms? Because that's something we've struggled to think about, how we might do that. Because, their room is their home with all their belongings in.
Yeah.
How have you addressed that?
In here, we had to literally move we literally made the moves and then made calls afterwards and started to brief with families. We are now having lengthy conversations with families. Home managers are around people moving rooms now so that we can stand a red house up ready for the entire of the winter. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't get used. But the times are unprecedented for everybody, aren't they? And I think for me, after doing it here, when it was literally very quick and we had to make those decisions sort of, within the hours to who we were going to move, to do it in a planned way and have those discussions with families, to have those, support that person to understand as much as they can be confident where you're moving to them and do it in a pace that matches, their needs, far better than doing it literally as an outbreak hits you.
Thanks. We had an infection control audit yesterday, which was really positive. It was really, really helpful. And that was one of the questions, would you move people? So we haven't got vacancies to move people into. And I thought, my God, how would we do that?
I've got people sharing rooms here now.
Okay.
Sharing rooms for Aidan, and we developed a risk assessment on that people have got to be 2 meters apart. You wouldn't put people together that had COPD or respiratory diagnosis or asthma, etc. You wouldn't have people together that would not be able to maintain social distancing. But yeah, we've got double rooms here now to free up the red house.
Right.
Second house that we created here is a communal red house, which is actually, ironically, probably been one of the best things that we've ever done. because the well-being in that communal red house is incredible. And
so is that communal sleeping?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So we'd got one lounge that had 2 different toilets, it's fire exit, basically one sort of large square slightly offset on one side, but we've got beds in there, very small sort of seating area, sort of with a television, etc. But people have slept and spent their days in there since this outbreak started. But so I say the well-being's incredible.
We did the same with one of our outbreaks. We used a conservatory. So we had an individual that wouldn't stay in their room, but she said her favourite space was the conservatory. So she moved into there with 2 other people that had all been diagnosed on the same day. And we've got privacy screens, you know, we put profiling beds in. We lived in that conservatory. They loved it. They were quite disappointed when we told them it was time to move out.
We've got 5 people in the communal red house now, and I mean we're day 27 into this, because one asymptomatic resident presented with a hard symptom on day 13, so we had to reset isolation. So, and then because we had, you know, another red house, it wasn't feasible to sort of start moving around, it just wasn't safe. So we ended up, out of the 5, having to reset isolation for 3 people, and that was also the 3 asymptomatic positive people didn't present until the very end. So of course it's carried on now, but the people that have been very unwell have actually got a huge amount from the other people living in that house. And because it's the same staff sort of day and night, you know, there's just those 2 teams, or 2 day teams, 2 night teams, etc. You know, people have got to know people even better. So yeah, that's worked really well. But it's having those profiling beds on stock. One of the big things I'd say, if you're going to move rooms, get some Z beds. We had 3 people on Z beds for the first 24 hours. We literally bought mattress coverings, the Z beds that have got the really sturdy legs, that have got the slats, so you know that you can sit on the end of them and they're not going to tip. But actually you can't run the risk of somebody diagnosed with COVID not being on a profiling bed, because you do need to elevate their chest, where somebody that, you know, it appears well, hasn't got any soft signs or symptoms. So I say we use their beds 3 occasions. They're easy to store, and that you can erect, even I can erect them in sort of, you know, a minute, just pull the legs out. So that was an invaluable thing to have on site.
Thanks, Eve. Good luck.
Eve, can I ask you a question? I'm just sort of just trying to sort of work out what you do. You've got somebody with a positive test, or they're showing signs.
Yeah.
Other people are at risk, and you've got people who are negative. So is there a risk by people being moved into an area because they're showing some signs, but they haven't been tested? They might not have COVID, but they go into a location where there is a greater risk of them getting COVID. Is that a worry? Is that a concern?
Yeah, I think you know, without the support of the PCR tests or the test guide that we had sort of from you, without having a positive result, we wouldn't mix a symptomatic person and a positive person. So at the beginning of this, we obviously had the 2 red houses that had symptomatic people in. When they were confirmed positive, we brought them together, and when other people living here were confirmed positive around the same time, they were introduced into the area as well. People that have remained with negative tests, and we've got 2 people living here that if I had a spare £1 million, I'd bet you £1 million that they're positive. But these tests are all coming back negative. They've got every single sign going, and their exposure to symptomatic and asymptomatic people was there.
And is the PCR coming back with anything, the lab
test? No. But these 2 people, honestly, classically, symptom-wise and soft sign-wise, they've got everything that you could think of apart from the cough. But everything else is there. But we've kept those 2 together in what we've called our amber house, because we've not had positive tests for those. So we've not mixed symptomatic and confirmed positive people together. But then you have to also be able to then obviously accommodate, you know, that extra zone for that reason, Jeffrey, or otherwise we wouldn't do that.
Eve, I'll try and give you and Shreya a call after. I think I might have an idea here.
Okay, yeah, cool, please.
So thank you. So it's like we need 3 zones. We need sort of the red, the green, and we're not quite sure. And
you need your red zone for people that are either before you get positive results that are symptomatic. Once you've got positive results, you need a red area. You group everybody together, staff as well, staff and residents within your home, and put them into an amber. Excuse the language. I don't mean put, but just that, support people into the amber area that have had exposure, staff and people living here, and then keep everybody together that you would determine as green. So we did track and trace work on the staff in terms of where they've been over the last 72 hours, track back to care notes, who they mixed with out of work. And even those questions, who have you mixed with out of work, resulted in one member of staff going into the amber team, the other member of staff staying in the green team.
Gosh.
So
they go into the team, is that as a result of having had exposure to someone who has had an infection, or are you just going on a kind of what your best guess is based on the level of exposure they may have had from what they've been doing when they're not at work?
Yeah, both. The level of exposure here, obviously, and I know they're all in PPE, but that level of exposure is still absolutely critical, because somebody can cough and it goes onto somebody's clothes and they go into a green area and you're off and running. And also in terms of car sharing, who do they live near? Who have they mixed with? Because we know that they might car share and wear masks when they come into work, but I'm not convinced they car share if they're walking into town or something. The next, if they're getting in the car outside of work time, we've got no guarantee that people are wearing masks at that time. So that's why we said it was important to do the track and trace work with staff and cover the whole 72 hours, leading up to people becoming symptomatic and positive.
Eve, can I just ask a question? Leading up to, so before you had the symptomatic residents, were you keeping residents and staff cohorted, or were they all sort of within the home living a sort of normal life?
To some degree, here was cohorted. The maintenance team weren't cohorted, and because originally there was only one nurse on here, so the nursing staff weren't cohorted. And I'll be honest, it wasn't 100% strict that you will not go past, where now it's very sort of clear that, the green team are not allowed to access past this point, red team cannot access past this point. It wasn't, and I mean, it's really quite military over there.
Yeah, I think, I think having that green, amber, red zone is such a good idea. It's just, for me, and the layout of our home and the staff that we have, I think we would find it very difficult to, especially at night, to have people in separate areas. So we end up going into all areas, seeing all residents. It just makes
nights are hard. Yeah, nights are hard because obviously there is less staff. We started with like sort of downloading care notes, etc. How many, people, if you've got 5 staff, for example, on shift, how many people require support overnight, how many hours in between, and try to group them. So at least there's something, at least you've got something to start working with, as having just a complete free-for-all.
Yeah.
But we found it easier when we downloaded the fire plans and actually did it in those zones that way.
Okay, thank you.
Eve, sorry, question. I may have missed it. Was that a nurse? Is it a nursing home?
Yeah.
Is there more than one nurse? Have you been able to go to the stage of having 2 nurses on duty to separate day and night? Is that what you've been able to do?
We've had, myself and Karen have been here for quite a lot of this. So we're both nurses. So we've taken sort of red and amber. We've been here. We have had 2 nurses. So the manager is also a nurse. So she's sort of come out of management hours, if you like, and gone into the red and amber zone. We've also got care practitioners. So we've kept them in green because fundamentally that's where people have been well. And we've done a little bit of remote nursing as well in different areas when we've not had 2 nurses on site. Because we've had a nurse on site, so to remote in and, FaceTime, WhatsApp video calls, for example, we have been able to manage that off-site that way. Okay,
that sounds really imaginative, and that sounds really good. So I don't want to hog the questions, I'm sure.
You just have to try and think outside the box, don't you, as much as possible in this, because it just moves so quick, doesn't it?
Well, yes, absolutely. Does anybody else have any questions?
Sorry, Eve, just a quick question. There was the whole thing about rubbish had to be sort of stored for 72 hours right at the beginning. Are you doing that, or are you literally trying to get it out as quickly as possible?
It's all outside. Everything's double bagged and out.
Okay.
In terms of clinical waste management, to give you an idea, on a home this size, we are shifting at least 50 clinical waste bags a day. At least.
Okay.
There's a huge amount. And there's one thing that I would say is missing from all guidance, is having the ability to have somebody on site literally doing nothing but hourly cleaning, emptying yellow bins, filling up donning and doffing stations, and supporting staff with self-care around PPE changes is probably the most invaluable role. If there's any role that you can create from any of your departments, whether that's your maintenance guy, your administrator, whoever, that role is absolutely critical. And the only other thing I will say, and then I will be quiet, is that we'd stood up red teams across all the homes in preparation for this happening. The reality is you could stand your red team up and have your nurse, etc., have maybe a house lead, senior care, whoever in that red team. But actually when it happens, your red team is going to be pulled from the area where you've got symptomatic positive people, because actually they've already had exposure. So not to use those would just be ludicrous. If you were then to pull your green team into your red team, you risk wiping out half your home. And I'll be honest, that hit us like a brick that day when we sort of saw people becoming symptomatic, that actually your red team's got to come from here because your green team's got to stay well. So that was a big, so that I would say that, and we have sort of muted that with staff across other homes. We haven't quite said it as bluntly as that. But actually the reality is when you're standing a red team up, exposure's there. And also people that are that poorly, they need people that are well. Say again, Guy.
So your red team essentially gets chosen for you on many occasions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you don't, you just risk, don't you, taking out so many staff. If Absolutely. You can guarantee those other staff have that exposure, or as much as you can guarantee, even if they've all volunteered, why would you pull them into your red positive zone and then put your staff that have been exposed into a green zone? You just go like wildfire. You'd transmit the whole home.
Yeah, great.
Literally.
Did you have any problems with staff at all?
Initially, we didn't have. We had 1 or 2 members of staff that said that they would support the red team. But I think from a leadership point of view, I think once they saw all of us and the leadership team in visors, hairnets, that actually we're going to walk with you every single day for however long it takes. No, not at all.
So Eve, what are you wearing? So you said hairnets. So which wouldn't be on public health list or government list. So what are you wearing?
So our PPE for all of our homes, for people that are positive or clearly symptomatic when you've had positive staff, is hairnet, visor, mask, aprons, but aprons broken at the neck, not just put round the head because of that risk of exposure here. Gloves, and there's foot baths, foot mats everywhere at each entrance and exit, just absolutely soaked in Jay's fluid.
Okay, it's the hair nets I haven't heard before.
Well, apparently it can live on hair for 24 hours, and if you've got someone coughing,
yeah,
and then you've got a visor on, and yet you've got, whether your hair's in a ponytail, a bun, or whether it's short, there's no protection at all.
Okay, thank you.
I think very, very sobering just listening to you. I'm so grateful that you really led the way in the work that you've been doing and sharing, and I'm immensely grateful. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, or we're all stunned into silence and concern.
You know, the best thing is that everybody's doing really well. There've been some really poorly people. We've used dexamethasone, antibiotics for people with low oxygen sats. Did think a couple of times there was a couple of people we were going to lose. But yeah, literally with minute by minute, hourly nursing care and excellent care from the care staff, they are all pulling through. And I would say at this point, if we lose anybody, they're all nearly on 28 days past positive tests now. So hopefully now, you know, we will get through this without losing anybody.
That's amazing.
So that's good.
Did you get the support from GPs to use dexamethasone? Or
yeah, the GP was really good, to be fair. Out in the NICE guidance now as well, and one of the requirements, one of the indicators for giving dexamethasone is oxygen sats less than 92%. So we had somebody down at oxygen sats of 78 at one point. That's how poorly they were. He's now up talking, singing and walking again. So it's good.
A book, Eva. You should be writing a book so we can all go and buy it and read it, the whole thing.
I will leave Trin to do that. He's the academic one. I'm not that clever. I'm all right doing this, but not writing. Policies, yeah, but not book.
No, okay. Anybody else got any questions? I know we've run over time. It's 3:22, but it's been an amazing conversation. And Eve, thank you so much for what you've shared with us. It's all pertinent, relevant. It's great stuff, and we've all learned hugely from what you've said. Any other questions from anybody? We've still got well over 40 people online, and it's been a long afternoon already. Any other questions? No, I don't think so. I think you stunned everyone into silence, Eve. Can I just thank you amazingly for what you've shared with us? It's been really valuable and really helpful. And we could go on discussing this all day long, but I'm sure we've all got plenty to do. So as far as I'm concerned, on behalf of the Devon Care Homes Collaborative, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for contributing particularly. I can't see Lucy, but I'm sure she's still there. Thank you, Guy. And Elder's already gone on, but thank you to her lately, of course. I haven't got anything else to add, except I think it's our next event is on the 16th of December. Is that right, Louise?
Yeah, sounds about right. Don't put me on the spot. I don't know. I think it is, but we'll confirm by email and all the other. Lorna's saying yes.
Yeah, it is. It's the 16th, 2 o'clock, because it's our residents' Christmas party that day too.
Great. We'll have our new, lateral flow test by then, so we'll have chaos from visitors queuing up outside, no doubt. But anyway,
but will we have any Christmas decorations and trees?
Oh yes, we'll check all our baubles.
Yeah, soak them in Milton first.
Yeah.
The home will still smell like a swimming pool.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.